Won't help.
Supposed to be using the mic. Using the mic.
I'm not there live yet.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our April 10th Word on NPA meeting.
Tom, you need the mic?
What?
Do you need the mic?
Yeah. I'd like to welcome everyone to our April 10th meeting. And one technical announcement before we go, and that's that we have, I think, 5 microphones, 2 wireless ones that are sort of in the back, and 2 wired ones that are closer in. One's here, another one's over here, and then there's a 3rd wired one
Here.
in the, as I see at the back left corner. And then for speakers who are going to be sitting at the table, we have wired mics over here as well. So again, thanks for coming. As usual, we're going to start with introductions, and I'll start. My name's Tom Darenthal. I live on Nash Place. I'm part of the steering committee, and we're going to start right here with this gentleman on. We'll work our way around the back and then through the front. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim Barr. I'm from the Old East End.
I'm Carol Livingston. I live on Calarco Court and I'm part of the steering committee as well.
Gary Golden, also Calarco Court.
Susan Lenz. I live on Colonial Square.
I'm Julia Lynham and I live on North Street.
Breck Bowden, Brooks Avenue.
Oh, you're good. We're going around the back. We'll come around the back.
Linda Bowden, Brooks Avenue.
Catherine Verman, North Street.
Karen Long, Henry Street.
Selena Colburn, Latham Court.
Kathy Alwell, North Prospect Street.
We've got our. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we got one on this side. I would keep that one. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Keep that mic that way.
Meg Linehan, North Street. Marjorie Corbman, North Street.
My name's Carter Newbeezer, Ward 1 City Councilor, and I'm over off Riverside.
Hi, my name's Lisa Kingsbury. I'm the Associate Director of Planning at UVM.
Tony Libro, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of AAM, which owns the Doubletree Hotel in South Burlington.
Joel Collada, 20 Chase Street in the Old East End. I volunteer with GMT and Vermont Walking College.
Samantha Ayotte, Old East End, and member of the steering committee.
Richard Hilliard, High Grove Court.
Angie Chapel Sokol, North Prospect Street.
Jonathan Chapel Sokol, North Prospect Street, and a member of the steering committee.
Sharon Busher, East Avenue.
Catherine Buck, North Prospect Street.
Glenn Martin, Macaulay Square.
Peter Lukowski, East Avenue.
Cheryl Green, East Avenue, Burlington Co-housing.
Oscar, do we have anyone online?
We have one more person.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Bedtime ran long. Matt Price, Prospect Hill.
Okay. Karen?
Hi there, everybody. This is Karen Bastine. I'm with the UVM Medical Center and I live in Ward 5.
Sophie? Sophie, we couldn't hear you. Now we can hear you.
Sophie Quest, Old East End.
Jason?
Yep. Jason Stuffle, Colchester Ave.
And Cyril?
Cyril Flash off of East Ave.
All right, and we have newcomer.
Just asking for your name.
Tim Doherty from Colonial Square.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we have announcements. If you have an announcement, just raise your hand and you can make your announcement.
Sorry. Evening, everybody. I have a few announcements. I should remember.
Yes.
I can remember them this time. First, welcome back, Fosca. We're so happy you're here. We know that the AV is going to run perfectly. Really appreciate it. Thank you. We know that Town Meeting TV did their best last time, and we really appreciate what they do, but we know it's going to be perfect this time. Thank you.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah.
I want to just make a quick announcement. This weekend, the Friends of the Fletcher Free Library are holding a book sale. There's tons of books and they're all at $4. There are some real winners in there. You'll see price tags of up to 15 on some of the books, all $4. And because you're kind of a political science, social science kind of group, we have a ton of political science and social science books that we want to sell. That's number 2. Number 3 is Ruby Kleiman, who was elected to the steering committee last month, found that he was unable to fulfill the duties in essence because of some change in life plans over the next several months. So he has decided not to be on the steering committee. At the same time, we have somebody who has expressed interest, and I'm going to put Selena Colburn's name in nomination to join the steering committee. She, the way the bylaws work is we nominate 1 month and we vote the next month. But in 3 words or less, Selena has served as city councilor, served as state rep, serves the community, serves the state. She's done tons of stuff. She's going to be board on the steering committee, but we're going to really be happy she wants to do it. So I would like to nominate Selena for steering committee. And it's seconded, and then we can maybe you want to introduce yourself and say hi.
Sure. Oh, you should use that. Yeah. Hi, I'm Selena Colburn, and I think I know lots and lots and lots of you. And used to come to these meetings all the time as a city councilor and state rep, and have really missed them, but took some time off after stepping down from elected office to just reconnect with my family and delve into a new job. But I've been really wanting to get to these meetings, and figured that joining the steering committee would be a really good way to motivate myself to be here. And just, I've always valued our community in these meetings, and just, I think it's a really exciting time with the recent elections and just how much community engagement there was and how much interest there really was in revitalizing the NPAs and continuing to just bolster what happens here. So I'm really excited to be a part of that if you'll have me.
And just last of all, I'm holding the attendance list. Are there people in the room who have not signed the attendance list? We are doing our best now to keep better track of who's attending the meetings. So if there's other people besides Kathy, there's a second page you can go to. Just keep your hand up or raise your hand and we'll make sure it gets over there. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Sharon.
Thank you. I was looking to see if Dave Colley was here, but I don't see him. You know, Dave is our representative with the Winooski Bridge, and he's been doing a really good job of trying to get people involved. And there was going to be a walking tour, I believe, last week, which was canceled. I think that it was supposed to be slated for tomorrow, although I'm not sure I've seen anything to confirm that.
It's going to be next Wednesday. They canceled it tonight because it's too rainy.
Okay, so it's next Wednesday?
Yeah, next Wednesday.
Okay.
It's got a limited number of people that are involved.
Right. So, so the reason I'm bringing this up is that I follow a lot of meetings. And so last night at the Board of Finance, there were some financial requests, and one of them had to do with the intersection in Ward 1 of Riverside and Colchester and Barrett and Mill Street, that intersection. And there have been some tweaks to that based on some input from Locomotion. And so they were before the Board of Finance to ask for money. That's not my focus. Well, I care about the money, but that wasn't the focus. The point was that I made the request that DPW get in touch with the steering committee because I think I made my point that the big meetings that occur between Winooski and Burlington have huge agendas. And this is a local issue for the people that really live in that vicinity. And I felt that it would be really good if the NPA could potentially accommodate DPW. They said they would get in touch. There's a meeting. I'm going to remind them again. But I just wanted people to know that I think we'd like to know what the final design is. And it's not going to start immediately, but they are going to start. The state is actually going to be the one in charge of making the improvements, working with the city. But I just wanted to let people know that besides that walking tour, there will be, I'm hoping, an opportunity for more people to see it on CCTV and to come to the NPA if you can accommodate them. Okay.
Karen, have they set a date for that meeting?
For which meeting?
Not the walking through, but the meeting you were talking about the street design?
No, well, they asked for money approval and the Board of Finance gave that approval, but they're coming back to the board, I believe in May, the beginning of May, to ask for the final approval and give the council an opportunity, counselors, wherever you are, to weigh in on this. But I feel that, if we could also weigh in on it, it's really for information only. I don't think we're going to, it's fairly, set in stone, but there is an opportunity to see what's going to happen. And I feel like I always like to know in advance if I can. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Sophie.
Dave and a number of other people are working hard to make sure that there can be some separation between bicycles and pedestrians in both Kobari intersection and on the bridge. So we're all working for that, but so far it hasn't happened.
Okay, thanks. Any other? Oh, Richard.
I've got two things. So Karen and I think we're probably the only ones in the room. Is that right? We attended a meeting about 3 months ago. Yes. At Winooski High School on this subject. And Karen and I both spoke up in favor of a roundabout at the Burlington end of the bridge. And they seem to be pouring cold water on it. Agreed. Which I think is unfortunate. I'm just back from a country with a higher per capita incident of roundabouts than even England. And you can see how smoothly they work. And at one time, there was a notion that it would be a sort of gateway to Burlington. But the consultants that hosted the meeting didn't seem to think that was on. If anyone else thinks it's a good idea, I would encourage them to keep involved in this because I think it could be a way to resolve an almost intractable problem.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead. Still got the floor.
So as I was away, the March the 25th, I think it was, vote on the zoning happened. And I'm not quite sure that what I gathered from 7 days and the Free Press websites adequately covered it. And I wondered if someone could give an update in 10 seconds or 15 seconds of how it all went down.
Does Councilor Dorr?
Yes, maybe. Let's do a city council. Let's do it a city council update. All right.
Someone else?
Yes, and then you. Go ahead.
To make it,
I just want to let everybody know that Christopher McCandless died, and you probably all know him because this was his place, and he loved this place, and he was always trying to get more and more groups to use it. And so he was very happy that we met here every month. So he died on March 22nd.
Could I speak about the roundabout?
Sophie, is that you?
Yes, I'd just like to say that for 3 or 4 years, many people have been asking for the roundabout, and we've heard no all the time. And I suspect that's the way it's going to be, because it's been very clear and very loud. No, 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 no. They say they have to pull a house down, and it's an ancient house, and they can't pull that house down. That's one reason for no.
Okay.
I know that Tim is going to give an update about the city council, but I just personally like to say I sat through the entire council meeting the other night, and you are on the 25th, and you may agree or disagree with the outcome, but we saw democracy actually functionally in action. And I just want to thank everyone who was involved with that, because it was just an outstanding display of democracy.
All right. Yes.
Hi, folks. Thanks. Sorry to be a few minutes late. I don't know if anybody's mentioned. Sorry. Yes. Erhard Montka over on Grove Street, 60 Grove Street, across from Szymanska Park. Just to your point, I can't remember if you. Sorry. You were talking about the one with the neighborhood code. Yeah. Just so folks know who may not have sat through the whole thing, there's kind of another shoe to drop, which is that we don't, and I'm sure Tim will probably speak to this during his update, and Carter as well, but folks need to stay engaged. This is not, it's not done. There's a number of items that can still be improved with the zoning. And I just want to encourage folks to remain engaged with the whole neighborhood code discussion. The mayor, in her statement when she was still mayor-elect, indicated that she certainly supported the outcome from the other night, but that it was quite clear to her that more needed to be done, and there was a pledge from her to continue working on it over the coming months. And as folks may or may not know, part of it, implementation of part of it, the part that might have affected Ward 1 the most, was actually postponed until October 1st. So there's at least 6 months to work on some improvements. So just wanted to say that.
Well, thanks for that update. Cyril, you have your hand up?
It's true. I just want to briefly respond to Sophie's comment about the no for the roundabout. My understanding is that a single lane roundabout will fit without disturbing any historic or any other kind of building in that spot. So again, my particular preference happens to be, in terms of the bridge, single lane for motor vehicles, one each direction, and plenty of protected lane areas for bicyclists and pedestrians. So, it happens that both Colchester Avenue, Riverside Avenue, and potentially the bridge would all be single lanes feeding into a single lane roundabout. So I encourage people to, I don't feel like it's too late, even though people say it's set in stone. I think we still need to advocate for a bridge of the future, not a bridge of today. And even if it degrades the quality of the traffic intersections from a C to an F, I think it's an opportunity to voice our values and say, hey, we really care about offsetting our carbon, and really make this a point of, we're going to go for what makes sense for pedestrians and bicyclists and motor vehicles at the same time.
Okay. Karen, I think you were next.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to make sure, I've been trying to get the word out as much as possible. I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware that UVM Medical Center and the planning office are going to be hosting another question and answer session on the renewal of our land use MOU. For those of you who aren't aware of this, when I presented At the February meeting, we heard you that a lot was going on, and you asked us to postpone action on our MOU renewal work, which we've done. And so we have more time for you all to engage in the process. So again, tomorrow night, we'll be having a Q&A session from 5:30 to 7 at our building. It's actually UVM's building, but where we have a bunch of clinics on 1 South Prospect. So we'll be in room 4411, and I'm going to be putting a lot of signs up so that you all know where to go, but please join us.
Okay, thanks. Jason, you have your hand up?
Yep. Yeah. So Jason Stuffle, I'm also on the Winooski Bridge Advisory Committee with Dave Cawley. I actually represent the Burlington Walk Bike Council. And so I do encourage people, if they would like to see a different design on the Kobari intersection, to raise that with your city councilors and the mayor. I'm also in favor of a roundabout. I was when the vote happened about 5 years ago. And while the bridge itself is Winooski and Burlington working together, the intersection is fully on Burlington. And this infrastructure, once in place, is going to be there for a long time, as well as the bridge. And if you look at our goals as a city for climate reduction, walkability, bikeability, and other things, that really lines up with that, similar to what Cyril said with a single lane roundabout. The current one proposes adding an additional lane of traffic downhill on Colchester Ave, which I don't think suits anyone. So as much as we've heard no for a lot of things, I would encourage you to advocate with everyone you can bend an ear with. And please feel free to reach out to me with any concerns or questions you have. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted to, so I'm Charlie, I'm actually live in Ward 2, but I wanted to share a couple things. One's a technical thing, and another thing is a nice story. So the technical thing is that the NPA has upgraded most of the equipment that we're using tonight. So we upgraded the mixer, we upgraded the something called the capture card, and we upgraded the computer. So we're hoping to have fewer problems. So Town Meeting TV is actually working to make everything work better. The second thing is that Ward 1 actually got us a couple of wireless microphones, and so that's going to help these meetings as well. So we're trying to make these meetings go as smoothly as possible. I apologize for any inconveniences in the past. So now for the nice story. So during the eclipse, I was assigned to be in the Church Street City Hall Park area and interview people. And so basically I said the same thing to everybody. So who are you? Where are you from? What do you think of the eclipse? And what do you think of Burlington? And I can tell you right now, I heard hundreds of people saying how lovely Burlington was, how wonderful it was. And then I said, how about parking and housing? You know, you made it here, obviously. And they all said, no, we overcame that. That's fine. But I heard hundreds and hundreds of people saying over and over how wonderful Burlington was. And I just wanted to tell you that. Thank you.
Just a little bit of information on the Kobari intersection and the Winooski Bridge. I would advise people to reach out to Dave and Jason, and I would suggest to take a walk on Colchester if you have the ability, and walk down Colchester, walk on Barrett, walk on Riverside, and then walk across the bridge. And don't just do it on a nice day. Do it when it's rainy. Do it when it's, there's high traffic. Do it in the morning, the afternoon, all different times, so that they can have a really good gauge of all different types of information to help with the design. And especially Jason mentioned adding that left turning lane on Colchester. If anybody has ever walked on that on the sidewalk, like next to the cemetery, it has barely any green belt. And that is essentially what would happen towards that intersection. They would take away part of that green belt, which just makes it really devastating to walk next, like be right next to cars, especially people speeding down the hill. So definitely take a walk and share your information. You're also more than welcome to share your information with us and we can relay it to Dave and Jason. But it's really good to have all different types of perspectives, especially, like I said, at a lot of different times during the day and different weather and stuff. So
I'm going to jump onto the Kobari intersection here. If they do add the left turn lane, which is the current proposal, at the bottom of Colchester, there'll be a left turn lane in addition to a straight through lane. They will be removing that green strip. If you walk up and down Colchester or really throughout the city, when you look in the green strip, you see tire marks. Cars are regularly running over the green strip. And just yesterday, as a little girl was hit in a crosswalk in the New North End, a week or two ago, a man was killed on the sidewalk in South Burlington. I know that public safety has been a big discussion. It's been a miss that we haven't talked about cars and the damage they're causing to our communities, to our own people. I looked it up before I came. I'm going to go into my what's it called? The speak out here. The cars are insane in Burlington. If we took the 70 Vermonters who died each year in car violence, in car traffic, that would be the equivalent of one small plane crashing out of BTV airport every year. If we took the amount of Americans dying to car traffic, to car violence, to car crashes, I'm not going to call it accidents. It is always negligence. It is always operator error or it's infrastructure designed poorly. If we took the 49,000 Americans that die in car crashes every year, that would be the equivalent of 250 Boeing 747s crashing a year. What would our response be? Would we say more regulation, more licensing, more restrictions? Or would we say, that's how we get around. That's what traffic is, I guess. I think it's insane. I think we have a long way to go in this country as Americans, as Vermonters. I get super passionate about this. Keep that in mind as we're going forward with these bridges and roundabouts and all this discussion. Thanks.
Are there other? I guess we're really in speak out. Somehow I fail almost every month to stop announcements and start speak out, but you guys have moved along quite well. So I actually want to add something to what Sam said, and that's if you're going to walk around the neighborhood in the vicinity of the bridge or walk across the bridge and you have a dog, you should take your dog with you. It's a totally different experience when you have a dog on a standard leash, which is like 6 feet, and you realize how small the sidewalks are, especially if there's someone coming towards you with 2 dogs. And then you're trying to decide, are they going to move into the street to get around or am I going to move in? I mean, it's just something, if you do have a dog, walk across, it'll change your perspective a little bit.
I'm going to just add one thing. If anybody with all of the things that we're saying is frightened to walk across the bridge or to do anything, please feel free to reach out to me. I am very privileged that I get to work remotely. And if you just shoot me an email or you can shoot me a text and let me know, I will gladly walk across the street and walk all around the neighborhood with you.
Anything else for to speak out?
I'm just going to add one thing.
Yes.
Last night at the Board of Finance, they did say that because of locomotion, they have made a 2-way bike lane on the proposal, and they haven't done anything to really separate, unfortunately, the pedestrians from the bicyclists, which is still, I think, a problem. By making that 2-way bike lane, it adds a foot to the bridge. And so they had to send that back to the engineers to see if indeed that could really be realized. But they're listening. That was the point that they made. They're listening and they're trying to respond to, as all of you were saying, all of the comments that people are giving them. Initially, they didn't seem like they were going to respond after that big first public meeting, but there's been a change. And so they are much more receptive to comments. So I think there's hope. Thank you.
All right. I actually want to move forward to the next item, which, it's something I need to say. I it's a segue from what Charlie said, and that's that we have a couple wireless mics, and I have a proposal to basically double that number, go from 2 to 4, so that we don't have to worry about all the wires. And it turns out that in our budget for the year that's going to close at the end of June, we have enough money to buy 2 more microphones. They're not cheap, but they're not terribly expensive. To get the microphones and rechargeable batteries is about $600. So I'm looking for approval to spend $600 to buy a couple extra microphones for our NPA meetings. Uncommitted,
Oh, about 1,100 at this point, yeah.
but some of that's committed, right?
No, we've paid for the Friends Meeting House. We do have to still keep paying Sam for her food. And yeah, the couple of $100 and then the mics we were hoping. So I think we've looked at the budget and I hope that it,
So bottom line is that if we don't use it by the end of the fiscal year, which ends from a practical point of view, if we don't spend it by like the end of May, we're going to lose the ability to spend it, even though the year closes at the end of June. And we do have enough money in our budget for this item.
So I'll move to approve the purchase of 2 cordless microphones from our 2023-2024 budget.
I second it.
Okay. Any discussion, comments? Yes.
This is not a friendly motion. I'm just wondering if we were just to wait until closer to the end of the fiscal year, just in case there's some other costs. Or do you feel like we need to do that right now?
Jonathan?
So the fiscal year really does effectively end May 15th.
Okay.
So in theory, we could make this motion at our next meeting, but that's very tight.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it would take us 3 days to get the invoice and, yes, point taken, but we don't have a ton of time.
We did, just to add to what Jonathan said, we did sort of go through the budget and said, what do we expect to spend money on? And so we're in pretty good shape with regard to what we're allocating. That's helpful. Thank you. So should we take a? Oh, sorry. Sarah?
Well, I just want to voice strong support for the proposal. As someone who helped doing the video and audio for about 10 years or so, I'm very impressed with the new purchases and the proposed purchases. It all makes sense. And I'm so happy for CCTV and I'm so happy for Ward 1 NPA. Congratulations.
Let me ask a question of Sarah. Sarah, what year did you start recording the Ward 1 NPA meetings with the camera?
So 2000, it's probably 6. It could have been 5, somewhere between 6 and 7. So maybe say I started 6 or 7 and I ended at the pandemic, whenever that was.
Okay.
But we can go back and look at the archives. I know that that's an upcoming reality that CCTV wants to promote, and I'm hoping to have a presentation at co-housing early this summer. And so I'll let CCTV speak to their desires, but you probably can guess, I feel that what CCTV provides for our community is beyond worth every penny. And it's just such an important feature that we're so fortunate to have.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we're going to take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It sounds pretty unanimous. Thank you very much. It turns out the lead time for these microphones is not very long. We should probably have them for our next meeting. So, and again, thanks for your approval. The next thing on our agenda is a school commissioner update. Carry.
Evening. So Gary Golden, I'm the East District School Commissioner for the Burlington School Board. Once again, I want to thank many of you for voting yes to our budget. It's sort of a mixed blessing to be, second vote in a row that was in the 70% range. We appreciate the support, but if you're one of the more fiscally conservative members, that gives the board a little too much confidence about what will pass next year and effects to our, less capably financially sound neighbors. I mean, just canvassing for Carter just down this street and around the block, met several who were just looking at, we were 16% increase in our budget. That's just not sustainable. And yet the way the budgets are set up, it is our future. So we have a couple of choices tonight about what information you might want from me. I can either pontificate about my suggestions to the state about how they may change school budgets, or I can talk about the 3 construction projects we have going on at the moment in the district, as well as personnel, which I know Tim has mentioned a couple of times. So I leave that to you. Which of the 2 would you like me to yak on about?
Construction.
Ooh, all right. You're gonna let me off the hook. All right. So we are still looking at 2 years and probably 3 months before the high school is complete. It's just a huge project, a school of, we're currently down to about 930 students. Post-pandemic, we were at 1,130. So the baby boomer slide is affecting us. There are many confident members of the board who are predicting that this new 21st century high school will draw many families to Burlington. That is a hope. Otherwise, we're sort of stabilizing. Our global majority families have really saved us the last 20 years. I'll bore you again with my story. I was an employee of the district when the Somali Bantu wave came, and every elementary school, I was at Barnes, now Sustainability Academy, had to form a classroom within 2 weeks notice for all the new American students that were coming in with virtually no English. All that staffing, making a space was a challenge. But that population has allowed us to withstand that slide that every other district in the state has gone through that does not have a similar population. So our superintendent was saying at the last meeting that he feels like the numbers will be stable for a couple of years based on the number of students in the pipeline, as well as the numbers just leveling out. But that's an expensive proposition, $160 million at least construction, and then the servicing the bond. So that is ongoing. All the buildings are down. If you ever drive by, you'll see that it's completely leveled. The tech building was the last because it was perhaps the most contaminated, not only the PCBs, but all, they've had 2 auto programs in the building for that time. So all that CO2 buildup, just everything that comes with that. Yeah. Sure.
Can people ask questions as you go along?
Of course. Oh, no, go ahead.
I just think it's really important to know of the number of students, the change of about 200 plus students or whatever you identified. How many of those do you know were still, the families still live in Burlington, but they've opted to send their children elsewhere because of Macy's being the high school? Do we know that?
We do. So that number has actually flattened back out. Many of the parents have brought their students back because they heard from their neighbors that the education that was happening was quality, that it's a funky building, there's no two ways about that. If you walk through, there's still the Kohl's signs and some of the different advertising, and they've just named it's the Kohl's Cafe. They've just taken it in stride and had fun with it. My favorite line of my own, of course, I find my stuff very entertaining, is that, they'll be able to tell their kids and grandkids, I went to school in a mall. Problem is, the grandkids will say, what's a mall? Other than that, it's still a nice story, and everything is fine. The administration has stabilized. We did have the hiccup in the fall that has sort of evened out. Sabrina stepped in from assistant principal to interim principal, and that's been renewed for another year. So she's added some stability. The issue there is we had two rifts, reduction in force in the building, and still negotiating our way through one of them. So, but that's just, again, the declining numbers. So that building's on track. We're fighting with the state. They are putting, a couple of the agencies are putting a lot of conditions on the $16 million that the state awarded us for construction, and working either to have those conditions changed or the legislation itself reworded to free up the money, not necessarily without conditions, but the conditions were anything we spent up into destruction could not be reimbursed. So that was crazy, because that's all your planning, that's, all the initial removal, et cetera. And then there have been new conditions placed on getting the money since then, all the other efforts. So that's our main battle around the high school. We did, our legislators on the federal level were able to give us, I think it's a couple million in wastewater management. So that's come. And then that's a good segue to the second big project, which is out at the airport. We have a huge aviation program. I mean, used to that was also in the tech building, and you walk up and there's this Bell helicopter, literally a helicopter in the classroom that they take apart and put back together, and now out at the airport, I think when I did my tour, there are at least 12 or 13 airframes that they worked on and could fly if they got their licensure. How's that for a final? So, I'm going to fly what I just put back together. Confidence. And those students are stepping into $60,000, $70,000 jobs next door, either at Beta or flying school or National Guard. But we're also finding that that's the place that we can house our advanced manufacturing, that we can house our remaining auto service. We're combining our auto mechanics and auto shop, because the shop was declining enrollment, and one teacher retired. The remaining teacher can do both. And so they're going to do both. And that will likely be placed at the airport as well. That was a $10 million grant that I think was kind of a Leahy going away present. And then actually there are two more projects. So those are two big ones. There's slightly big one, 10 million at the Integrated Arts. That is a 1890 building, is the base, has been upgraded once in the 30s. So it's no air condition or no good ventilation, just everything's bad. So the geotherm rods just got drilled in to do heating and air from that. So those actually, I think they got delayed, so they're still underway. And then the whole of next year the students will be at St. Mark's, or at Sarah Holbrook, K1, I think, or Sarah Holbrook. So we'll be renting space. So that whole building's just going to get a remake. Pretty much like if you've been into Edmonds Middle, is also 1890s building that has been remade along the years and added to the middle building, within the last 10 years was refurbished. Finally got a cafeteria. So those are those two projects. And then the last one is we have secured a long-term lease at Rock Point for our two high school alternative programs, On Top and Horizons. Near my heart, that was a group that those faculty I was a part of, not directly, but when I worked in the district. So two great programs, very now moving more toward a experiential learning. So they're out in the community, doing whatever they, strikes their interests, and then building credit through those efforts. So that's a long-term lease that's going to cost us a little over $400,000 a year, but they don't typically, high schools in Vermont, and probably more so across the country, at least Northeast, house their students with behavioral challenges in a different building. And it's just for their sake. I mean, when I was doing trainings, my favorite line was, if we wanted to create a high school setting that would drive the most students nuts, just how it was with all the transitions, all the people, we couldn't do a better job than what we created at high schools. So the ability to just have a better setting is really what drove this. Rock Point we've rented from them. They were interested in giving up. It's that last build. It's the old cafeteria meeting room with some dorm space that's at the very end of Rock Point's drive. And it's going to be an amazing space. They can use the lake. They can use Rock Point itself for science. It's accessible to the high school, 10-minute walk. So if they're in tech or they're in a program that they want to do at the high school or meet with an expert at the high school, they can do that. So those are our construction projects. I'm going to talk a little bit about state budget in that window. That's just folded into all school budgets. And it's just, we are looking at what, $4 billion conservative estimate of repairs that need to happen to schools in Vermont. And, where the hell is that money coming from? But as long as that's tagged onto our school budget, that's when you have a third of your budgets going down. South Burlington just went down again. One of our board members is a language teacher there. She got her RIF notice right before our meeting last week. So, we're very fortunate, but, lots to be talked about on that end.
I saw a post earlier today and I'm going to read it to you real quick and just see if you've heard anything about it. But Vermont Public posted that lawmakers unveil educational finance overhaul that would diminish local control. And they're going to vote on Friday, and starting in 2027, it could be that the state makes the initial decision on how much the school districts spend, and then they can be taxed on if they go over or not. So if you have heard anything or if you want to speak on that,
I have not heard, so thank you. And I think the state's going to find themselves in some trouble. Yeah. Anything around state funding has to happen in the shadow of the Brigham decision from the 1990s. So the Brigham families from Whiting, Vermont, and they had sued the state because they felt like, based on what their daughter, in this case, was offered at school, was inferior to other districts that had higher funding. So in that time period, you were looking at Essex Junction with IBM, incredibly low taxes. You were looking at Vernon with Vermont Yankee, had zero school taxes, yet amazing programs, buildings, etc. So I'm predicting another lawsuit based on Brigham, which was a Vermont Supreme Court decision that said funding has to be equal, but it's up to the legislature to determine what that would look like. Gotta love them. So that's out there, and that has to be what every new piece of legislation has to really go by. Foundation failed, and that was one, I think the gentleman in Vermont Digger, Republican from Northeast Kingdom, was his idea to go back to that. No, that's kind of should be dead on arrival. But I mean, my suggestion on the funding would be to start parsing out what schools don't have any control over. You know, the mental health funding that comes from the state is really just paid to the schools, but they have to include it in their budget. So you've now raised your local budget 1% for that mandated service. If you're talking about the CLA, which is the the common level of appraisal, which makes all property in Vermont equal, you know, that impacts us, even though the schools have no control over that. If you remember from my presentation, we were looking at a 0.5% gain of operating cost on our initial budget. And then it just kept getting added onto by construction and then the CLA. So, and then the redoing of the weighted pupil money. So if we were just looking at the money that we have control over, most districts are doing a good job. What we don't have control over are buildings and budgets that are being voted down because of construction costs and the CLA. Go ahead.
We've only really got time.
Just want to say that my understanding of that is the legislature's attempt to curb property tax. So I don't want to perceive it that it's, the state trying to get control over local governing, but I think that we have runaway property tax in this state, and it's affecting so many problems.
Yeah, well, the local control is that property taxes are how we pay for education in Vermont. Is that smart? Probably not. But it also is one of two sources of income you have control over. And it's been allotted that, you know, because you have a lot of towns that may not have we're going to get in the weeds. We'll look at this and
Why don't
I'll
we
be back.
bring this up at our next meeting and just talk
Yes, I'll call
explicitly
in from
about
Portugal and
we'll
7 hour
have
difference.
a secure Zoom line.
Yeah, thank you. No. So thank you all. And again, thank you for your support. And if you have questions, I'll do a post. Maybe I'll just do a post in response, and you can use my text or email me to say what the hell, and we'll go from there. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Next on our agenda is city council update. And you guys want to come up here? And I'll relinquish this mic in just a second here. And the subjects I've got on my list, and they may have changed, was community safety, DPW movement on Riverside. And that's it.
Thanks, everybody. I just want to say for the record, Gary, I attended my first city council meeting as a city councilor from Portugal. So there is precedent for that. Right. So if you want to get left off the hook, I'm not sure you necessarily can be.
I'm fine.
How do you want to handle this? Do you want to talk about the neighborhood code first and get that out of the way? So there was a request for a summary of a 10-second summary of what happened in the neighborhood code. So let me give a shot at that. Oh, well, Carter. We had at our second to last city council meeting, we had a final vote on the neighborhood code. As I think many of you know, I was in favor of returning it to the committees for more work. There wasn't even close to enough support on the city council for that. It enjoyed pretty broad bipartisan support to move forward. So a lot of the meeting was focused on the various amendments. A series of amendments were passed, several of which were introduced by our former city councilor, Zariah Hightower, which dealt with things such as the wildlife corridor over on Riverside, as well as adjustments to the definition of the newly defined residential medium zoning definition. Those passed. I supported those, as did most of the city council. The other amendment at issue kept our a section of Ward 1 from being moved double up zoning from residential low to newly defined residential medium. It kept it at newly defined residential low, which, despite some of the political discussion and rhetoric, is a significant upzoning, as those of you who have followed it are well aware. And then, as Earhart alluded to, another significant amendment was introduced by Councilor Travers and perhaps others that postponed the implementation of the second building piece of the neighborhood code for 6 months. And so, to Earhart's point, those of us who are still really interested in this, you should really still be engaged and focused with the Planning Commission. So that lives with the Planning Commission right now. But I think there's plenty of room for additional discussion and advocacy on these issues. And whether or not there's enough momentum to change that particular provision, or whether that's really what we want to do, I think are open topics, but I don't think at all this is a dead issue or an issue that is somehow set in stone. So I'm eager to keep working on it. I'm sure Carter is too, and more to come on that. But we should stay focused on that, because I think it matters. And I think that I think my sense from the folks who have stayed on the city council is that there is plenty of appetite to continue to think about this and continue to tweak it.
Oh, thank you. So it was referred back to planning and not to the city council ordinance committee?
I think that it now lives in the planning commission, although I guess I could be wrong about that.
Okay.
Recall.
It wasn't very clear
Yeah.
at the end. I didn't know, and we have been talking among ourselves, wondering who really has control of this. And I would have preferred that it go to the city council ordinance committee. But that's just my preference. I just didn't know. Planning has phase 2 of the neighborhood code that they're going to take up, and their next meeting is on the 23rd of this month. And phase 2 is on their agenda, which is oversized lots, RL lots, et cetera. There's a whole laundry list, but I didn't know where this landed, and I was hoping we would find out who's going to control that.
I think it's the planning commission, but I guess I could be wrong about that. Recall that this went through a somewhat unusual committee process, and that it wasn't planning commission, then ordinance. It was
a joint committee. Yeah.
joint,
Yeah.
which seemed like a good idea to me at the time, but in retrospect, I'm not so sure it was. But in any event, I'll make sure I get you an answer to
Okay. That would be great.
that. That's what I think. Do you know that I'm wrong on that?
No, I don't think it's clear where I didn't have clarity on where it's landing. My plan,
I think it would be really important for both of you to get the communication out to all of us to know what committee we should be looking to track to find out what the next steps are. Thank you.
My hope. Yeah, I will do that. My hope is to get a group together of folks, Earhart being one of those folks. I know the mayor is putting together advisory groups, which she mentioned during her State of the City address. I'm sure I know one of those is affordability. So looking to pull together affordability advocates specifically to continue addressing some of the negative externalities that were brought up. I was just appointed chair of CDNR, so if it's ordinance, it's ordinance, but I think that was a good place that I'm hoping to take it up and continue it. Did get caught up in the last 3 weeks of onboarding meetings and all those good things. But that's sort of priority number 1.
Earhart.
With the ordinance committee, so I zoomed into the Ward 6 meeting, and Joan Shannon actually, she gave an explanation of neighborhood code that I wish we all had heard in January or December. I mean, it was really clear. It was, all the changes, whatever. I thought it was really great. And she did not, it wasn't clear though, as Sharon said, like where it's going now. But I agree, we need to all, chip in and help this, because it did pass with all this ideas that these things need improvement. But on the ordinance committee, I am feeling a little concerned that there are 2 Ward 6 people. Like, how does that get divvied up that many, there's only 4 people and 2 of them are the Ward 6, the East District, or not East, whatever their district is, and their other one.
So the committee assignments are, a negotiation process between the 2 political parties, is the short answer to that question.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a considerable amount of inter-caucus discussion involving what people want, what kinds of committees they want to be on, how much time they have, how often they meet, what their interests are, and then political considerations of who has the majority on the city council, and therefore who's going to, put whom on what committee.
And do you know who else besides Joan and Becca are the other 2 are?
Yeah,
There's only one other. It's a 3-member ordinance committee, and Jean is going to be on there.
Jean Bergman. Okay. Right. Thanks.
But I just wanted to add to on neighborhood code. It's a good plug for my council blog. Put a post up on my website, carterforbtv.com, detailing neighborhood code a little while ago.
Talk louder.
Yeah, I could talk louder too.
Nobody in the room can hear.
Yeah.
I'll talk louder. The other piece was just a breakdown of last council meeting as well, the initial council meeting, the swearing in I threw on there as well. So some folks were talking about getting a breakdown of that as well, I think at one point. So folks can check that out, and it should be on Front Porch Forum as well. And then I did just have a bunch of different updates too I wanted to throw out, but are there more questions or more discussion on neighborhood code?
I love reading about urbanism and housing. It's really exciting. Zoning is going to keep changing. I can't remember which US municipalities did this. I know that Maine has an interesting one. I'm speaking to try and address the really valid concerns that some big out-of-state landlords are going to plop down stuff and be absent and just run stuff into the ground. I know Maine has a first-time homebuyer program that encourages, I don't know how they do it, but they encourage millennials to own multifamily housing. And so they try and encourage people to live in the building that they own. And another municipality, I can't recall which, it might be Minneapolis, they just straight up require that if you have between 4 and 8 units, and you own the building, you have to live in it. And I think there's some other interesting stuff we can consider here. So yeah, let's keep working on it.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you guys to ask for an actual opinion from the city attorney about the exact status of especially the component that has, the 6-month timeline before it's implemented. I don't have it right in front of me, but when I was looking at the whole neighborhood code and deep, enmeshed in that a couple of weeks ago, I was looking at state land use planning law, which governs the adoption of zoning amendments. And there was something in there that I read that really kind of confused me as to how something that gets passed, a zoning ordinance that gets passed that doesn't get implemented for 6 months, like what its actual effect is. Because there seem to be some provisions that once something gets warned, you can actually, a planning commission or development review board can review a prospective project like the one in Lakeside that I think a number of us are aware of, that actually has a second building on the same lot of record. So there is a provision in state land use law that basically says once the zoning amendment has been warned, you could actually review under the new the proposed zoning amendment, and how that meshes with something that is not supposed to be implemented for 6 months is it just, I think it's legal gray ground, and I think it might be something that needs to get looked at, especially as folks, developers come in and propose, something that isn't supposed to be actually implemented for 6 months. So, if you guys could get city attorney to look into that, I think that would be really helpful. And then the only other point to make is, for me, unresolved issues is affordability. Neighborhood code as passed has absolutely no affordability provisions whatsoever. It's kind of a wing and prayer based on, today's costs of development. You're basically guaranteed to get 2-bedroom apartments that cost at least $2,700 per unit per month rent, and 1-bedroom apartments that are at least, in the $1,800 per unit per month without utilities range, just so that developers, so they can make a reasonable profit, which of course they're entitled to given the risk and investment. So affordability for me is one of the things that really needs to be looked at. And for folks who didn't get into the weeds on it, Portland, Oregon instituted its neighborhood code. They only went up to six additional units, and they required half of them to be affordable. So that I don't know, half may be a bridge too far, it may be too much for a project to pencil out, but I think we need to figure out some way to make our current inclusionary zoning, which only applies to developments with 5 or more units, somehow to make that applicable to the neighborhood code.
Yeah. One more there. And it's also just worth noting that inclusionary zoning, like we talk about it as affordable, but that's really like middle income, lower middle income folks. It really doesn't hit folks in more extreme poverty.
Celine, you got a quick question?
Well, maybe a question or maybe just a comment. I'm just reading the minutes of the council agenda and the minutes on the motion, and it looks like Councillor Travers, the maker of the amendment about the 6-month thing, said, I'm sorry, now I have my glasses on. I can't read the print this small on my phone. So let me try again. Said that this addresses concerns by constituents and will allow the planning commission to work on improving the language around the ordinance. So it seemed to be the intent of the maker of the amendment that the planning commission would be the primary entity if the minutes are accurate.
That was my understanding too, but I'll make sure I get a final answer.
Can I just say one last thing with this?
Moving forward. We're gonna go to public safety, or we're gonna stay in this all night.
So I've got updates. Do you want to talk after? Maybe Sharon?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you want to talk after maybe, or?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to not get your feedback.
I need to say this. Affordability was brought up by me in October and November, and the planning commission was deaf to this. So you all need to advocate. Thank you.
Yeah. I have a quick laundry list that includes public safety, if it's okay. Some are quick updates we've talked about, and then some are bigger discussions. But GMT, as Tom knows, the fairs are resuming. So I have a link if anybody wants that with just a breakdown on their website. I can share that with you. Just give me your email afterward. DPW street cleaning is going to be happening. Our zone is Zone E. Most of Ward 1, I think all of Ward 1 is Zone E, which is going to be on May 1st. So if folks are parking on the street, even if it's resident only parking, your car needs to be off the street or it's going to get towed. The reason that they do street cleaning is because it keeps the lake healthy, bike infrastructure stays cleared, so it's safer. So just wanted to give folks a heads up there. I had an update on neighborhood code here. I won't go into because we just talked about it. The mayor just started these meetings convening our Burlington delegation in the State House, and then city councilors, folks from her office, to get some more synergy with the city's priorities and our representation's priorities. Some of the work, obviously, our lobbyists in Montpelier are sort of baked in because we're sort of a holdover from the last administration. But I just want to note that because I think it's exciting and hopefully is going to lead to better outcomes for us in Montpelier. So we did get committee assignments, which you talked about a little bit. I just wanted to let folks know what committees I'm on so that if different issues come up, what I can sort of work on most effectively. I'm chairing CD&R. I'm a member of the Parks, Art, and Culture, along with Councilor McKnight and Councilor Barlow. And then I'm a member of the Public Safety Committee, which Councilor Grant is chairing and Councilor Barlow is a member of as well. The UVM MOU with the university, I'm sure is going to come back up. I haven't heard anything specifically on it. That's any new information. But if you haven't yet, you should check out the auditor's report. You should check out Troy, our representative, Troy Hedrick's posts on Front Porch Forum, and I think his website as well, detailing concerns that I think a lot of us might share. So just want folks to start doing homework so that when that comes up, we all have a shared understanding. I'm glad Karen was here because the UVM MC MOU is coming up. Karen was kind enough to give me some time this week, yesterday. So I got some more information on that and was going to plug, but she already did tomorrow, 5:30 to 7. There's a public information session on it. Sharon, yeah, thanks for following Board of Finance because it was helpful to tune in and hear important questions raised as a new counselor from you. But other than the updates around the bridge, I just wanted to highlight in the intersection over at Colchester, I wanted to highlight that overdoses are trending down pretty significantly, I think, according to fire department data through the CRT program. So just wanted to highlight that because it's a bit of good news.
Why?
Reason for that?
So they didn't give a definite. I think two things maybe are probably logical answers. One, we've had increased enforcement around drugs coming into the state in recent months. And then on the flip side of that, I think we're growing our ability on the harm reduction healthcare side of things and growing capacity there. So I'm waiting to see what the mayor's going to be doing on that. But Selena is definitely the expert when it comes to harm reduction.
An expert, but I regularly.
If I might, before the microphone goes on, this was addressed at great length at the last Public Safety Committee meeting, and I raised it during the last City Council meeting as well, and asked the same question of our police chief and our fire chief, why, and I would encourage, and I wish that I had thought to bring the slides, but I encourage people to take a look. Sort of fall-ish, we see our overdose numbers really starting to plummet and maintaining a plateau through January, February. Knock on wood for want of a better term. Understandably, none of the professionals at the Public Safety Committee meeting were willing to say definitively what they really, definitively, nobody really knows exactly why. As Carter said, there was considerable enforcement from our federal law enforcement officials on out-of-state drug activity, particularly from the Philadelphia area, which they think might have had an impact. I think that's all well and good. I will say from my own experience as 10 years as a drug prosecutor, I did not see sustained changes in the price of heroin. It was heroin when I was doing it, after even the largest of busts. So I'm not 100% sure whether or not we can directly attribute this sort of seems to be fairly lengthy reduction in overdoses to a constellation of drug enforcement actions. It probably played a part. The other theory that was put forward was the fire department's, changed approach. They've got this pilot approach. Again, I'm in favor of that as well, as I am in favor of drug enforcement. I'm not so sure that that's the whole answer either, because that, of course, is a way of more effectively dealing with overdoses as they happen. So why are we seeing a lower overdose rate? So we asked the Public Safety Committee, and now Carter's going to be on it. I'm not going to be on it this year. We asked folks to really dig in and try and figure out what we're doing, if anything, to get some answers to this, but it is good news. Sorry, Celine, I didn't mean to.
That's okay. I was also going to mention the fire department's pilot. I think there is some correlation there. And like you say, we'll need to examine if there's causation. I think there is a fair amount of research emerging that shows that enforcement can actually sometimes lead to upticks in overdose and supply safety issues. So that will be an important thing to watch too.
For those, just by way of explanation, the reason why enforcement does lead to, and there is a correlation between enforcement activity and opioid overdoses, is when you put a short-term change in the market dynamics for heroin into a small market, you cut off supply, or you limit the amount of supply, so users are using less than they normally would. That typically is not sustained because more drug dealers come in and fill the void. So then they have more access to product, and they use more when their tolerance has been depleted. And so that leads to more overdoses. The same thing happens when folks leave rehab or leave incarceration.
Just a few more quick updates from me, if that's okay. And just on the CRT program, just to round it out, right now we rely completely on overtime from firefighters. So I think one of the conversations is, how do we properly staff that? Is it continuing with the fire department? Is it wrapped up? How are we actually filling that need in a holistic way, without just solely, putting it on extra hours on the firefighters?
I don't think it's sustainable.
No. And that's been, I think that's been communicated clearly. The only other, I would encourage folks to go watch the most recent Board of Finance if you are interested in the bridge project, because they laid out on one of the slides a bunch of significant dates from 2025 to 2030, which is the estimated project date completion. So just to get a better sense of like different milestones that you should be looking out for, I would encourage folks to look on that, or again, just share me your email and I can email you more specifics. I did raise the roundabout concern when I met initially with DPW. Chapin, the director of DPW, seems to be under the impression that it's not feasible. I think he did specify that he worded it as a 2-lane is not feasible. I definitely agree we ought to have a roundabout there, and I guess I need to dig in more. So want to do that and want to do more homework before I'm throwing anybody under the bus, but it just seems like common sense to me that we can fit a roundabout in a pretty large intersection, and that would be a little more convenient and safer, regardless of what mode of transportation. But Sam, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing that I remember in one of the meetings about the Kobari intersection. The reason that they wanted to stick, or that they were shying away from having 1-lane intersection or 1-lane roundabout instead of a 2, is that it's technically a trucking route, and so the trucks can't fit around the single lane roundabout. So, because if you do the 1-lane roundabout, you don't have to demo that historic house that they were talking about. But I think their argument is the trucking route and fitting a semi through it.
Yeah. I'll just point out, I kind of looked at the dimensions of the Route 7 roundabout, and it will fit beautifully at Colchester. It's 1 lane and not a lot of trucks that go down Route 7.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. And that is so great, the roundabout at Shelburne Road, Shelburne Street, I think. And that is one lane and it works with trucks. I bet. Yeah. Thank you for saying.
Gary, Portugal's full of roundabout. I don't know, is Gary still here?
Yeah.
He's gone. I was gonna say, we can give him a homework assignment. He can take pictures of all the wonderful roundabouts.
Yeah. Just just two more real quick.
We're out of time.
Just two more quick updates. I'm sorry, Tom. CEDO for the Community Development Block Grant just released initial draft of their plan and is welcoming feedback. So I have a link that I can share with folks if they have interest in providing that feedback or checking out the plan as drafted. And then FY25 budget presentations are coming up, mostly, I believe, throughout May. But those are separate from the Board of Finance meetings, or in addition to, I should say, I guess. So those are all on the city website through the city calendar. So I'd encourage folks, if you want to be involved in that or get some background information that's happening, to look out for those. There's a ton more updates. I'm noticing that so far in this role, you're just constantly hit every day with more and more things that we ought to be updating each other about. So apologize if I missed anything.
I have a request. Can I,
Sure.
Jermaine? So thanks very much about talking a little bit about the special program that the rescue people are doing in the fire department. And I'm wondering if it's a possibility, this would be a request to the steering committee, that we might have one of those people come to talk to us about the program. And I would recommend John Husbands, who I've seen in action. He's fabulous. John Husbands. Yeah.
I support that. I would just say, and I'm sure the steering committee will handle this adroitly, those folks are working tons of hours. They spend a lot of evenings away from their families right now. And so it's not that I'm opposed to it, but we should keep that in mind.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, if we're out of time, we're out of time. I had hoped to raise some issues on my own. I guess I would propose this after one of our NPA meetings. I think before the new year, I had a conversation with a number of you about the crime problem in Burlington, downtown Burlington, how it's affecting those of us who work and spend our days in downtown Burlington. And recently, I think just before Carter was on the city council, the end of March, the mayor and the entire city council received a pretty extensive letter from a law firm downtown that detailed their experiences with crime and with being a pretty persistent victim of crime, how it's affecting their business, how it's affecting their employees, how it's affecting their sort of life as members of the community downtown. And I thought it would be valuable. It is, I would say, more detailed than many of the communications that I got, which is why it caught my eye. And I thought it would be interesting for you folks to be aware of, but it is not atypical from the communications that I get regularly and that you're likely to start receiving. And it is also not atypical of my own experience as a business owner downtown. So since we're out of time, I thought maybe, one proposal would be I asked the steering committee to post this letter as a item for our next agenda. I made 10 or 15 hard copies of it, pass it out, and maybe folks have a chance to read it and we can talk about it next time around. But I think it's germane to a couple issues, two in particular. And again, I am mindful of the time, but one is just the sort of general impact and experience of criminal activity that is occurring on a daily basis downtown. And the severity of it, and the experience of those who are on the receiving end of it, the cost, both emotionally, but also financially. Number one, I think it's just reflecting on, it's not something I feel like we have a lot of discussion about in this room, number one. And number two, sort of reflecting on my first year as a city council person, one of the things that I was thinking about is that I don't feel like there has been much discussion either in my committee work, at the city council generally, or here at this NPA, or my other NPA, about sort of, Carter used the word externalities, about the sort of external effect of policy making in the city. The idea that Burlington is not a city that is surrounded by a fence or a moat, and that policy does impact whether or not people choose to come to Burlington, or stay in Burlington, and that whenever we're talking about policy, whether we're talking about climate change initiatives, whether we're talking about law enforcement, criminal justice initiatives, whether we're talking about zoning, really, I don't think tax policy, education, schools, all of these things, I think, needed short shrift to consideration and thought that there are cohorts of businesses and individuals who can choose to vote with their feet. And I worry about that a lot. I worry about that for our city and continue to worry about that for our city. And I'd like us to have a more robust discussion about that on multiple policy levels. This notion that, people can leave, businesses can leave, and we shouldn't govern from fear, but we should take careful note of the fact that South Burlington, Essex, our surrounding communities are in some ways competitors for a lot of scarce resources, and our policy considerations should reflect that. It doesn't necessarily dictate an answer to any particular policy question, but it's something that I feel like I would like to bring up more. So let me leave that here, given our time constraints, but something to think of, and maybe we can give it a little bit more time on our next NPA agenda. Yes.
Right.
I'm calling on people now, Tom. Sorry.
I imagine the letter is a matter of public record. Is it possible?
It's a matter of public record. It was sent to the mayor and everybody on the city.
Could a link be put on Front Porch Forum so that others could just get to it?
We can put it in the minutes. We put a link.
Yeah.
And I just want to add on to that. I would encourage everybody to watch the most recent Library Commission meeting, which is now being recorded, and the minutes, you can find them all on Civil Clerk. Between the beginning of the year and March 15th. So when there's behavioral incidents at the library, they fall into different kinds of categories. The word that is used is a noun called a trespass. And what it is it's when behavior at the library is sufficiently egregious that that the staff believes that the person shouldn't be in the library for a period of time. It could be for 6 hours. It could be for 6 months, depending on what they're doing in the library. Between the beginning of January and March 15th, there were 48 incidents that rose to the level of the individuals being trespassed. That's like one every 2 days. And there were an equal number of incidents, behavioral issues at the library that didn't rise to that level, but had to be handled by staff. And it ends up being, at the very bottom, it ends up being like 40 hours, a week's worth of FTE staff time, just managing these behavior issues. And the staff they're librarians, and they're the most fantastic people in the world. And even as behavioral issues can be taking place in one part of the library, there's music programs, there's literacy programs, there's educational programs going on in other parts of the library. The library is robust. The library is a great place to be, but the staff is managing behavioral issues at a rate that they never have had to do before. And we understand there are issues. We understand there are reasons for it. It's just a lot to put on the staff. The Library Commission is meeting with the mayor next week. So there will be a conversation about this at the highest level. And we're very happy that that's going to be happening. So thank you. I'm sorry to be.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much, and I apologize. I wanna ask our audience something really quick here. And that's, as you've probably noticed, especially since a lot of you come every month, that it's not easy to have a discussion where you let people express how they feel about stuff and yet make our schedule. All right. And
The city council does it amazingly well, so I don't know what you're talking about.
so first I want to apologize to our city councilors because they get short thrift on a regular basis, and that's mostly my fault. But I'm looking for ideas on how to better manage these meetings. And I don't want to do what I did tonight. Sharon wanted to say something. I said no. I don't say that very often because, well, I don't like to. I'd rather just hear what they have to say. But we have only so many minutes to talk about a subject. And if you have ideas on how we can better use the time we have, I am all ears. I would like to, it's like, should we schedule just less items? Although we've got a pretty dynamic city. I mean, it would have been easy to have twice as many subjects as we had tonight. So I'm asking for your help. I mean, should we?
Emails.
What?
We'll send emails.
Send emails.
Prioritize it. What's most important? I mean, to argue for Tom up to a lot of different people, everything's equal importance. Some people are, some people prioritize the public safety. Some people are prioritizing the neighborhood code. So it's equal importance to everybody. And also feels equal importance to us as a steering committee because we want to make sure that you guys are all getting information. So please send us emails and let us know. Because one of the suggestions I had that now I know to shoot down is we're not timing stuff. It doesn't work. It doesn't create this environment that we have that allows people to talk. So that's going to be something that is not an option, is to not have like a timer up on the wall so that people are rushing to get their statements done. So yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, it's just food for thought. And again, thanks for coming. And I apologize that you're always Angie.
I would like to say how much I have appreciated more recently the participation in our community. I see people here who I haven't seen before. And I don't know how the word is getting out, but the word is getting out that we can come here and talk to each other about important things. And our city councilors and our school board reps and the other people who come to speak to us, with us, talk with us and tell us a lot of things. So I just want to express my appreciation for this community speaking to each other, speaking with each other, and speaking to our representatives, and our representatives who are giving us boatloads of information. And it's only a portion of what it is, And I'm just expressing my appreciation for the ongoing conversation in this community.
Well, one last comment about that, because I noticed at the beginning of this meeting, I think the level of conversation, the volume of conversation, if I could measure it, was probably the highest pre-meeting volume that we've had ever. And it's you guys talking to one another. It's not, it's whatever struck you as talking to the person next to you. Well, it's okay, but yes.
Yeah, I was noticing that too. And I wondered if we could try to make a commitment as a whole group that if we think we want to speak during Speak Out, that if it's related to what's on the agenda down the road, that we wait and have that conversation with the presenting people or with city councilors. And I'm wondering if we have Speak Out at the end instead of at the beginning for a few minutes. I don't know if it would make a difference, but seeing what's already in the discussion,
yep.
I feel like some of the Speak Out tonight had to do with issues that are coming up later in the meeting too.
Good point. Carol?
I just supporting my moderator, that I think Sam probably could give up her presentation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then that the balance of this time be given to, the UVM folks so they can get, great.
To do so that there were no questions.
So next up, we have Lisa Kingsbury and Tony Lepro to talk about the UVM Cadman Woods development, which is in back of the DoubleTree.
It is. I have a map.
Okay.
We will show you.
Okay.
Yes.
I will give you the microphone.
Yeah. That's a different project. That's the Catamount Run. We've made a mistake. We're naming everything Catamount. So I can talk about both. Hi, I'm Lisa Kingsbury. I'm the Associate Director of Planning at UVM. I apologize to people who are behind me. And with me is Tony Libro. He's the Chief Operating Officer of AAM 15. They are the owners of the DoubleTree Hotel, and they are our double partners. They are our partners in the Catamount Woods housing project, which we are here to talk about tonight. Also here is Lonnie Raven, our associate planner at UVM. I'm sure a lot of you know Lonnie. We've been coming here for many, many years. And Alex Halpern from Freeman French Freeman. They are our architects on the project. And I think we may have a couple of our people online as well, but I can't see, so I'm not sure who's there. So just to give a little bit of background, I'm going to stand up for a second because I didn't bring a laser pointer and this map is confusing. I'm sure. Thank you. So yeah, this project is, just to clarify, so Catamount Run, which is in City Center, Market Street. It's being built next to South Burlington City Hall. That is another project. That one's already under construction and actually opening. First phases of that are opening this summer. About 550 beds for graduate students and faculty and staff in South Burlington. So that's a different project that UVM is working on. This one is Catamount Woods, which is 540 beds of apartment style student housing. It's intended to be primarily for upper class students, juniors and seniors. And this map is a little confusing, which is why I'm standing up, because this project is, well, this isn't why it's confusing, but to give you the background, our project, I'm sorry, Tom, I'm standing right in front of you. This project is in South Burlington. So we are going through the process, the permitting process with the city of South Burlington right now. We've had one meeting with the DRB and now we're in our next phase of the process. And part of the requirement is that we needed to have a neighborhood meeting. And that meeting needed to be scheduled in between putting in our application and our DRB hearing, which is now scheduled for May. And we had kind of had this on our timeline for a really long time because we're trying to stick to a tight timeline to get this permitted and open for summer of 2026. And I had lost track that the night we picked was the same night as the neighborhood code public hearing. And thank you to Sharon for reaching out on that. We had invited, South Burlington only required us to invite people who are within 500 feet of the property line, but we extended the invitation to our neighbors on East Avenue and our neighbors on East Terrace in South Burlington, and understand that a lot of people couldn't make it that evening. I know some of you did. Nancy was there that night. But I know a lot of people were also at City Hall and wanted to hear about the project. So we do have a video of that meeting. We're going to show basically the same slightly modified presentation tonight. We haven't figured out how we're going to share the video. So we have a link. We'll talk about that. And if anybody's interested in seeing the video after tonight, we can do that. But the reason this slide is here, just to give you a little orientation, I'm going to turn it over to Tony in a minute, and he's going to give you a better presentation. So another requirement in the city of South Burlington for this project is that we have to do a master plan application, which means we have to tell the city of South Burlington if we have any other plans on this parcel. And the parcel really goes from the rugby field all the way up to Patchen Road. So we have to tell them anything we're planning to do in the next 10 years, right, Lonnie? Six to 10 years. 6 to 10 years. And so we have had some preliminary thinking about the rugby field. If you've been following along with the MOU discussions, that is one of the property line, or excuse me, the municipal line on this is the rugby field here, the municipal line. Yep, this is Burlington. This is South Burlington. So this map is only showing some potential housing on the South Burlington side because this is from our permit application. But and I'm putting this up there because if you look at any of the public documents, you will see that. And I didn't want anybody to say, Lisa, you didn't talk about that part of it. Yes. This is Main Street, Route 2 right here. This is East Avenue. So here is the rugby field. And then this is the DoubleTree right here. You're going to see a better map in a second. But this here is the proposed Catamount Woods project. So we have some it's the parking lot. Yes. And so anyway, my point of showing this is just that we have some very preliminary thinking that maybe at some point in the next 10 years, we'll do something on the rugby fields, but that's not part of what we're here to talk to tonight. We're not permitting that, just some preliminary thinking. So next slide, please. This is going to orient you better because this is much better. So again, this is the DoubleTree here. This is the parking lot that they use for all of their events at the conference center. That's where our project is going to go. And I'm actually going to turn it right over to Tony.
You know what?
Do you want to stand?
Say it may be easier if I stand.
Yeah.
Tom, I'm sorry. You're going to be seeing the absolute worst side of me here.
So Tony's going to walk you through our project and then we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with everybody today. Just a reintroduction. My name is Tony Libro. I am the Chief Operating Officer of AAM 15 Management. We own and operate the DoubleTree Hotel. We also own and operate the Marriott Residence Inn in Colchester. And we also are the owners of 4 multifamily apartment buildings in downtown Burlington. So we have a lot of ties to the community in multiple towns. We employ approximately 240 people in the local community, and our employees come from all over northern Vermont. So we are very excited to be partnering with UVM on this project. So as you can see, this is the DoubleTree Hotel as it exists today. Thank you, Google Earth. And this is the parcel that for many, many years, over decades, has been rented by the hotel from UVM. It's UVM's land, and their land line, and we have a map that shows this in a second, I'll get to it, runs basically right along that driveway in a diagonal line. And so what you're looking at is the hotel as oriented from the back of the building. This porte cochere is where you would go as the entrance to the convention center. Okay. So this project is actually part of 3 projects that will all be going on simultaneously at the hotel. And so I'm going to walk everybody through all 3. The one we're here to talk about tonight is Catamount Woods, but there are 2 other projects that are happening simultaneous that I want to let everybody know about. They are part of a separate phase in the permitting because they are under form-based code versus the full design review board code. But you'll see how they kind of all fit together. So if we could run to the next slide, please. So this is the, back in August, AAM and the university signed a letter of intent on the project. This was the plans that were actually drawn by Freeman French. Thank you, Alex, and your team. And this is what was posted in the newspaper is roughly this building. This is to house approximately 545 students, upper class students in apartment style transitional housing. So 1 beds, 2 beds, 3 beds, 4 beds, very few 4 beds, very few 1 beds, mostly 2s and 3s. This building will be managed by AAM 15 Management and not by the university in a very similar manner as the Redstone Lofts. Parking for this building will all be contained on site. And you'll see how this all fits together here in a second. And we'll go into some of the attributes of the building. One of the questions that somebody's going to say is, well, why are the courtyards facing that way? Well, it's two reasons, really. First is it gives more of the student rooms better views. Rather than them looking back at the hotel building, they're now looking out at Centennial Woods. The other reason is it puts a very large building where the students will be utilizing those courtyards 3 seasons a year or 4 seasons a year, separating them from the hotel. So it's part of that process. If we could have the next slide, please. So this is the current landscape plan of the building. So you notice this white building here, and somebody's going to say to me, Tony, that doesn't exist today. And you are 100% right. As part of this process, we are losing 4.5 acres of parking, roughly 550 odd spaces that we regularly use for events. We need to replace that. And how we're going to replace that is the second project on the hotel portion, which is to build a structured parking lot that is connected to via walkways to the convention space. That will replace all of the parking that we are losing by building the student housing. So none of the parking should spill over anywhere else outside of that, including we will be asking for a waiver, a 50% waiver from the city of South Burlington on the parking requirement relative to the student housing. And the reason for that is that this is going to be part of Vermont Transit. This is part of the CAT shuttle system, bike programs, car share programs, bike share programs, potentially. All of those programs will be intertwined within this building. In the parking garage, on the basement level, you can actually see the entrance to that right about there. There will be a separate parking room, long-term parking room, for approximately 240 bicycles. That will be separated by 185 approximate numbers, 185 normal manual bicycles, and separate parking for electronic bicycles. However, from a safety concern perspective, the batteries for e-bikes, we spent a lot of time talking with the fire marshal about the batteries for e-bikes. And so what we're going to be putting in is on the back side of this building, kind of covered by these red shrubs right there, we're going to be putting in basically post office boxes that will have plugins for the e-bikes. And these will be firewalled because this is a concrete and steel building. So it's a 2-hour rated firewall safe system where these will be outside the building. No e-bike batteries will be allowed in the student housing. No e-bikes will be allowed in the student housing at all. They will all reside in this building separate from a life safety concern. Okay. You also see that we are losing our portico share. And the reason for that really is that because the parking for the events are going to take place in the structured parking, there's really no need for the portico share anymore. And what it does allow us to do is to create a much nicer winding road that comes through the building. And we have the roundabout here to slow everybody down. And so they come through and they come back out to Centennial Woods Way, which I noticed actually on Waze, you are now Centennial Woods Way. It was changed today. So you're going to say, Tony, what was there before? Well, that's actually the location, the original old 1955 motor lodge that was there. And those rooms are extremely outdated, and there's nothing that we can do with them. You can't expand that building or retrofit that building in a way that will make them modern hotel rooms where guests of Burlington want to stay. And so rather than try to retrofit that, we're actually going to raise that building to make room for the structured parking. And closer to Williston Road, connected to the hotel via a sky bridge, we're going to build 70 new hotel rooms. This will create an increase of about 12 hotel rooms to the overall hotel. Just because we like round numbers, it takes us from 311 to 325 because need to get to a nice round number. And these will be modern rooms that guests to our area and our city want to stay in. So rather than being fulls, they're queens. That's a primary request from many sports teams and families that are visiting the area make to the hotel regularly is we wish you had queens versus fulls. And there will be a few more suites, although not many suites because they're not generally asked for all that much. Oops, that doesn't sound good. If we go to the next slide, please. This is another rendering. I want to thank Jeff and Cynthia, who are landscape architects, of how the housing will look. There's actually two entrances. You see one here. That's the secondary entrance. The first entrance actually sits on Centennial Woods Way, which you would only see from a rendering looking east from west. But it gives you some idea of what this will look like. Now, I'm going to foreshadow a little bit. This is a nice, lovely parking area. Underneath that parking area is going to sit 180 geothermal wells. This building will be 100% geothermal. And on top of the parking garage, we are following, Alex, make sure I got this right. The proposed June 2024 energy guide. Did I get that right? All right. So we are putting enough solar panels on top of the garage to cover the solar requirement, even though there actually is no solar requirement because we're doing geothermal for Catamount Woods, the parking garage, and the new hotel building. So we're spending approximately $4.5 million in solar panels to cover the entire garage with solar. It will reduce our carbon footprint across the board. We are using complete green energy in the hotel through electric heat pump from Green Mountain Power, and then solar and then geothermal for Cat Woods. Now, there will be a emergency gas-fired boiler system because if you get below 10 degrees, sometimes geothermal wells don't always work. So there will be about 30% coverage in a backup system so that if the heat ever went down, we would be able to heat the building appropriately. As when we were looking at those systems, I said, well, the good news is I've got 325 rooms I can bring them over to if we lose the heat in the building. The next slide, please. So this gives you a rough idea of what the rooms will look like. These are meant to be transitional apartments. So they will have kitchens. They will have washers and dryers. It's going to be very safe, very sustainable, but just rough idea. It's true multifamily housing for the students. The next slide. Because it's transitioning from dorm style living to what they will face when they graduate from college. So, well, dorm style living generally revolves around communal bathrooms. They don't have kitchens in their rooms. And so this would you'd only have the people in your apartment sharing a bathroom, and you will have your own kitchen. Well, it will be a full apartment. You'll have a living room, you will have a kitchen, you will have your bedrooms. Yes, sir. So it's one bed per bedroom.
What don't they have that makes it transitional?
Well, what I'm saying is they transitions from the standpoint of the dorm to what they will probably look at when they graduate. It's closer to what they'll see when they graduate.
Question over here.
Yes.
So this is kind of like the idea. Many years ago, St. Michael's College built dormitories that were transitional, and because they're lower numbers of students, they're actually selling. I think they're selling a building to Champlain Housing Trust to turn it into apartments. Is that kind of the idea? Like if there's ever a decrease in student body, that they could become apartments?
So there is these are apartments. We have an agreement with the university that covers several decades that talks about this. And this is all still being worked out, so I can't talk too much about it. But the reality is that the intent is that these are for students. However, could these be turned into straight housing? Yes. I think that that may not work completely, but yes, they could. And if they ever were, then they would have the affordable portion requirement associated with them. Yes, sir.
What year of student is like the traffic first living years?
Lisa, would you like to take that one?
Upper class students. So it's intended for juniors and seniors.
Yes, sir.
I had a question, but I'll leave myself. I'm wondering about the cost of students in the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then what sort of the split cost is and then split students. And then does UVM have any intention of, or maybe I wasn't sure if I heard correctly, but eliminating the requirement for second-year students to stay on campus?
Lisa, would you like to cover that?
Yeah.
The second half of that, and I can cover the first half.
Yeah, no, I don't, there's no intention to eliminate students to remain in dorms and on campus.
Sorry, we had a mic change. The first question for anybody who didn't hear it on the Zoom link was what is the approximate cost? We are still working with our partners, PC Construction, the university, all of our consultants on determining the actual final cost of the building. Our goal is to make it as inexpensive as possible, but have a fabulous, beautiful, sustainable building that is safe and secure for the students. Yes, ma'am.
Although you said it was a separate project to the building, like the parking garage, does the cost of the parking garage affect the cost of the apartments? Since the construction cost of parking garages is pretty.
Well, so we actually are tracking all of the costs separately. So there's 3 separate projects. There's the hotel expansion, there's the parking garage, and then there's Catamount Woods. And so the costs that will be borne by the students are the cost of Catamount Woods. Although I will say that part of the parking for the students will take place in the parking garage, and there will be a cost to that. It's not going to be free, but no different than the cost for UVM students to park elsewhere.
One question I think maybe for both you or each of you, with the UVM still, the MOU still being negotiated, are these, is UVM's intention to count these toward those, wherever the last proposed goal was, which I think was 1.5 beds? And then, and I think if I'm understanding this right, this is moving forward regardless of the outcome of the MOU. And then the other thing I wasn't clear on months ago, and I was talking to a few city councilors, was just the impact on this setup between the university and a private business on revenue generated for the city. So is it a situation where we're going to get property tax revenue? Is it a situation where we're going to see an sorry.
So sorry, no revenue. You know what? I saw this. Do we want to? Do you want to cover this?
Just on the MOU, I'm not the person at the university who's dealing with that. So I think if and when the city council decides to take up the MOU and you have those conversations with Wendy Koenig, who's our director of government relations, and Richard Kate, who's our vice president of finance and administration, I know they were the ones who were working with Mayor Weinberger and with the former council. And if it gets brought up again, they'll be the people to answer.
I can just quickly jump in for people who are curious as to the answer to Carter's question. At least when we broke off discussions on the MOU a month or so ago, the Catamount Run and Catamount Woods projects would count toward the student count contemplated in the proposed MOU.
Yeah, I just want to ask, generally, I'm thinking about it for the first time. Is the cost of student dorms, and these are going to be more beautiful student dorms?
I hope so.
Okay. So is the cost of student dorms, does that help determine how much an individual landlord in the city of Berlin can charge students per room?
I can't answer for other landlords. I can only answer for us and the conversations that we've had with the university, and I can say there is a direct correlation.
Okay.
But I can't answer that question for other landlords.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. But I'm just thinking that some of the leadership people in the room could think about that.
Yeah,
I'd be curious.
Just to clarify that, it's UVM's intention to try to keep the cost of these as reasonable as we can. So, we're trying to keep costs in line for students. I can't speak for landlords downtown. I don't
Thank
know
you.
how they price their apartments.
And how many stories high?
5. Thank you, Alex. 5.
Do we want to just touch on?
Yep,
because
absolutely.
I know this is going to be one of the questions that people have is about traffic, because we're in South Burlington, we're behind the hotel. I think, Lonnie, what did we calculate? We're at least a half mile from the closest neighbor.
1,350 feet.
Yeah. Yeah. But I know traffic is a concern. So as Tony mentioned, we are asking the city of South Burlington for a waiver on our parking so that we would only provide parking for 50% of what we would normally be required. So less cars than we would be required for. We will have TDM measures. We have a preliminary traffic study. We're still kind of working through that with the traffic engineer, but I just wanted to, we put this slide up just to give you guys a little bit of the information that we've gotten, and looking at kind of the 2 preliminary intersection segments where students would likely be traveling to at the peak PM hour, which is what the state, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Lonnie, what the state and the city of South Burlington will be looking at, thinking that they would be coming out onto Williston Road and taking a right to head towards the Jug Handle, or going out what used to be Catamount Drive, and we have renamed apparently today to Centennial Woods Way and up to East Avenue. And that's the intersection that also is Kerrigan is on the other side. Yeah, Sharon.
That's what I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
So,
You have a mic? Did she have a mic?
sorry. That road has a gate that has remained open, but when that road was created, my hair was black, but I was still involved in this. And I just want to let you know that the intent was that was never supposed to be a throughway. And that's why the gate was there. And we were going to monitor traffic, because this is Burlington now that you're coming into, because that's the interface of Burlington, South Burlington. And so I was concerned. That was one of the reasons why I really wanted to hear this proposal, because there was never an intent to make that intersection for East Avenue and then Kerrigan Drive, where people go to act. And a lot of employees from the hospital use East Avenue and go up Kerrigan Drive to get to their destination. I'm not talking just, like me, I worked in the laboratory in transfusion medicine. I'm talking about emergency docs, et cetera. They need to get there. And the intent was never to make that intersection really prohibitive for quick movement. And I'm very concerned about this. And I wondered whatever happened. I mean, that was an agreement that I believe, if everyone does their research, will find was the intent never to make this a roadway. So what have you done to clarify that?
I'm not aware of any agreement that we would keep that closed off. What I will say, just to go back to the traffic study for a second, is looking at what our traffic engineer is expecting. So I'll just go right to the East Ave one, that if students were residents of this project were leaving and going that way, they would expect maybe 10 more vehicles to go down East Ave. What they're seeing right now at the peak hour is 675 to 735 vehicles.
Without the addition of this.
Without the addition,
Okay.
yes. So you've got I'm not great with math this time of the night, but 40, 50 variation on, in the peak hour, whether it's a Monday or a Wednesday or whatever. So adding 10 more by our traffic engineer's estimate, it's not something that's going to be felt on East Ave.
So just the last piece of this was that because of my new job with the government, I visit the lofts a fair amount, and there's a fair amount of cars that are associated with those units at UVM, and there's parking right close by, but they spill over into the commuter lot where I park when I have to go there. But anyways, I am concerned that I understand the intent is to try to deter students from parking there, but what is your plan if more cars end up being associated with these units? Is there a thought about what you're going to do with that spillover number of vehicles and where they would park?
Well, there's only so many parking spots.
Right.
So
So they
they're,
go onto East Avenue. I'll be very concerned about where they're going to go. That's my point.
But they're not allowed to park on East Avenue, right? Isn't that resident only?
Well, I understand, but that doesn't. I'm just really worried about.
okay,
what
so I
legal
just want to
and
make sure
what
that,
happens.
okay, so I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the point correctly. So the concern is that over the 151 spots that we would be providing, that if another 100 people wanted to park, they would be parking on East Avenue.
Where would they go is my first question.
Well, if they park on East Avenue, my understanding is that's ticketed because it's resident only.
East Avenue couldn't accommodate those 100.
Yeah.
So I was hoping that there would be a plan.
Well, I think the hope, Sharon, really, I mean, with our intention always at UVM and students, are unfortunately, I don't think our director of transportation and parking is online tonight. But he could tell you, before students, and I'm not going to call you out. Jim's over there too, but Jim can correct. Jim is retired, so I won't make Jim work right now. Jim is our former director of transportation and parking at UVM. But, we do a lot of work to make students understand when they get here, they don't need a car, right? And I know students a lot do, but we do a lot of work. They have to take a class online before they can get a parking permit. They're
Point is that you have.
I'm not missing the point. Tom, can I finish?
Sure.
I understand. No, I understand. It's, we work really hard with our students to make them understand that they don't need a car. And the hope is that when they get here, if they can't get a parking permit, they understand that they don't need a car. The CAT shuttle will come directly to this property. I know GMT right now is fare free for everyone, but even when there is a fare, UVM pays for all of our students, faculty, and staff to ride fare free. So it's a very short walk down to Williston Road. They can get there and get on the bus. I know this is going to South Burlington, and we just talked about South Burlington, but the pedestrian bridge, the bike pedestrian bridge is coming that can get students right over that bridge to Trader Joe's or Hannaford's or whatever they need to do over there. They have a lot of other options. We don't have a plan for spillover parking, and maybe we can talk more about Redstone Lofts, because if Redstone Lofts cars are spilling out into the neighborhoods, I'm unaware of that issue. No one's raised that with me.
My point was, did you have a plan? That was my first question. Would you park them somewhere else and park somewhere else on street property and shuttle? That was one of the questions.
Okay.
To prevent unintended parking on neighborhood streets, or who knows where, in the hospital parking garage, for all I know.
We don't right now. We don't right now. The other thing I'll mention about Redstone Lofts is that when we permitted that with the city of Burlington, the DRB at the time was a little skeptical also of the 50% waiver, but they said, okay, but you have a permit condition that we want you to do a traffic study in 2 years and let us know if this is working. And we did, and it was working. So
I know that I've kind of nodded my head at three people. There's a question there, and a question there that I saw. I don't care which order. If somebody's got a mic and is ready to go.
I think Kathy might have been.
That's okay. I'm doing the best I can.
Okay, my question is more around security and students. And I kind of worry, as someone who has worked most of their life with teenagers, and I know college kids are older, but it doesn't matter. You're mixing them with people coming and going into a hotel and to a large conference center. And that just screams, watch out, watch out.
I hear you.
Dangerous.
I hear you. And trust me, as the father of a 16, almost 17-year-old and a 10-year-old who thinks he's going on 45, I hear you. But if we could go back one slide, I think we'll do it. If that's possible. I'm so sorry. Nope. Keep going. There you go. Okay. Nope. Right there. So there's two main entrances to this building. The only way to get into that door will be to have a CAT card. It will be the same CAT card that the students are assigned by UVM. Not only will they need a CAT card to get into the building, they will also need a CAT card to get into their dorm room. And there will then be a combination lock on the door to their bedroom. So there's 3 levels of security before they even get to lay their head down. The reason why the building is orientated the way that it is to keep a separation between the hotel guests and the UVM students. So this is something that is extreme. This is also why the courtyards face Centennial Woods, so that when the students are outside enjoying themselves and having fruit punch, they can do so in a safe environment, separated from the hotel guests. There should not be any mixing, and if we find that there are, that would be an issue for us. This is also will be the closest residence hall to UVM police, which will be servicing this building. So we think we have an extremely good plan to deal with security. Security is something that we take extremely seriously at the hotel. We don't have a lot of instances of issues at the hotel. We do background checks on every single employee that comes to work for our company, regardless of role. So the only people who will be able to enter this building is either a student who is supposed to be there, their guests, or management. So we think that we'll be able to provide a very safe and secure building for the students. Sir.
Yeah, about the parking, we have to keep moving towards a future with less and less and less parking. South Burlington still has parking requirements when you build buildings.
Yep.
Man, so they're behind the times. We should have been pressuring them somehow to get rid of their parking requirements. Thanks for building less parking. Fill in that parking lot. Can you fill in that parking lot if there's the geothermal under it? Does that restrict future building?
It doesn't, because the pipes, I believe, are 6 feet down and there's a top level over them. So having parking or trucks cross over the top of them is not an issue. We actually had that conversation on a call, literally, I think 2 days ago, we were talking about that.
Great. Yeah. Keep getting rid of parking. It's terrible.
Okay, sir.
Just a quick question. Will students be required to get a permit to park in these spaces as they would elsewhere on the campus?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
100%.
But the parking will be managed by AAM 15. So
it's parking on our property, so it'll be managed by us, but it'll be stickered.
yeah.
Will it be a separate zone?
Yeah. So these students actually won't be able to, students who live here will not be eligible for an on-campus parking permit.
Yes, sir.
Very quickly, when you tear down the existing building, you make name the cupolas, which are historic.
There's actually nothing to our knowledge, and we've checked with the local commissions. There's nothing to our knowledge that is historic in the old building at this point.
That one out in the parking lot, I think.
Yeah, and I don't believe that is savable, nor do I actually think it's historic. But what we are doing is we're doing a nice ode to Vermont. So the bridge that is going to come from the new hotel building to the main building by the front desk area that'll be 3 stories up is going to be a free floating bridge designed to replicate the old Vermont truss bridges that you see throughout the state. So we're trying to bring in the look and feel of Vermont.
I put in a little homage to
Yep.
the original cupola, a little homage to the original cupola motel.
Okay,
Was there.
we can certainly look at that. And Tom is telling me I'm out of time, and I apologize for that. Tom, can I answer one more question? Okay, Tom said yes.
Quick questions. A lot of the new e-bikes, you can't take the battery off. Are you going to have plugs in the parking areas where the bikes are parked?
So the e-bikes so we had this conversation with the fire marshal. E-bike technology is changing rapidly. And so right now, according to the information that he provided to us, is the e-bike batteries actually can be removed from the bike. If the e-bike battery cannot be removed from the bike, it will not be allowed in either building. So that won't be an e-bike that we can actually have, because the batteries have to be popped out before we can let them in the building from a life safety concern.
Okay. You have to let the students know that before they bring their e-bikes.
Well, absolutely. There's going to be a very long list of things I probably have to let the students know. Tom, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you next month.